Hello and welcome. My name is Dychronic, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 PvE heavies for Destiny 2 Lightfall. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a very good understanding of the heavy meta and what to use in different circumstances as they apply to raids, Grandmaster Nightfalls, and other endgame PvE content. Not to mention the DPS spreadsheets that you guys know and love. And I know that you guys probably don't like to hear this every video, but these spreadsheets would really not be possible without my patrons on Patreon. And I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. Right now I'm making about $150 a month from Patreon for these spreadsheets that I take around 10 to 20 hours to make. So it's something that I really do need your help. So if you like these spreadsheets, please consider checking out in the description down below. Moving on, let's go ahead and get into it. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. All of its recommendations, the dark theme, the color coding, the links, the information about catalysts, and of course, the damage testing on the right side that everybody really does know and love. Moving on, let's go ahead and get started. At number 10, we have the Adaptive Frame 450 RPM Heavy Machine Guns. And honestly, the last time I had these things in the top 10 was back when we had Match Game over a year ago when we didn't have good linears or any good ranged option. And this season we got a pretty big buff with 10% more damage and up to 50% more reserve ammo, which makes them some of the best total ammo damage options in the game. Just the base version at 1.7 million damage compared to Galahorn's 1.2 million is extremely powerful, although obviously a lot less DPS and taking a lot longer to actually output that damage. And honestly, the heavy machine guns actually feel pretty good. On paper, when it looks at DPS, it's like kinda meh. But when you're actually fighting a tormentor with an actual crit spot that's somewhat difficult to hit, heavy machine guns fill that niche very well. My personal favorite is Commemoration with 4 times a charm and firing line. Some people really like the retrofit with 4 times and target lock, which is also a really good option too. Up next at number 9, we have the only sword on the list, which is gonna be the Lament, which is by far the best sword in the game for PvE in pretty much every way by far. It not only has more impact damage than pretty much every sword in the game, it also has the ability to do that chainsaw damage, which is extremely high burst damage. It's some of the best in the entire game. You also heal from your strikes. You don't technically need kills to get that healing, and it's barrier rounds, which the barrier rounds part doesn't really happen that much, but might as well. And lastly, it's very easy to use. If you're looking for a very easy, very high total ammo damage option that has good burst potential as well, although very high risk and high reward, Lament is excellent. And to be honest with you, I definitely think people overrate the blocking function just as mitigating damage. Being able to just fly backwards and run away while blocking does a lot. Following that at number 8, we have the legendary Adaptive Frame 120 grenade launchers. And this season, they also got a pretty big buff. 20% more damage against bosses and 40% more damage against everyone else, making them a very good option for DPS and okay for full ammo damage. If you look at them, they actually technically have more DPS and full ammo damage than all the other legendary rockets, although with Galahorn in the mix, those legendary rockets are above those. So if you don't have a Galahorn on the team or a decent legendary rocket option, these heavy grenade launchers are actually pretty good. And this season we got a new one in the form of Regnant, which has Spike plus Explosive Light and autoloading as a craftable version. And of course the Wendigo, the Typhon, and the Interference that we've had for quite some time. TLDR, really good DPS, okay full ammo damage, alternative to the rocket stuff, although not better than the rocket stuff. Following at number 7, we have the Two-Tailed Fox, a weapon that was pretty bad for a really long time. Since then, this season, it got a buff in the form of its catalyst that adds a 3rd rocket to the mix. If you don't know, its main perk has 2 rockets. The first one that's Void that does regular rocket damage and suppresses. The second one that's Solar and does Scorch damage, which means if you hit 2 of those Scorch ones, you actually ignite the target, which does a lot of extra damage. And that 3rd rocket is Arc damage, which comes with the catalyst and also jolts the target on top of the damage it deals, which actually makes it a pretty good option when it comes to damage output, however does pale in comparison to that of Galahorn, especially if Galahorn gives your entire team legendary rocket extra damage. After that, at number 6, we have the linear fusion rifles, both the aggressive frames and the precisions, although I definitely favor more towards the aggressives as they have more DPS and more full ammo damage. Although if you're very long range or you need more accuracy, the precisions might be better. And obviously this season we did get a nerf to linears. Pretty much across the board they got 15% less damage, which is pretty big. However, they still have a pretty respectable full ammo damage, which is much higher than that of Galahorn, and a pretty respectable DPS, which is not that far off of Galahorn, which is going to be the obvious competitor. So TLDR, still good DPS with the right combination, still really good full ammo damage at pretty much any range as long as you have a divinity bubble on the target, because that crit multiplier definitely needs those crits. And finally, they're legendary. They don't need an exotic slot like with Galahorn, so you can also have something like Witherhoard or Arbalest with it, which is part of the reason why Sleeper isn't on the list, although it is a decent option, technically has a lower higher end than that of these linears. although Sleeper is a good option too. Up next at number 5, we have the Grand Overture. In my opinion, definitely the dark horse of the season. A lot of people are very much underrating this weapon just because it's a little clunky. Alright, fine, it's actually very clunky and annoying to use, but the numbers don't lie. Currently, it has some of, if not the best DPS output of any weapon in the game, depending on how you measure Parasite by a pretty far margin, and it also has the highest total ammo damage in the game. Again, compared to Anarchy, it pales in comparison, it's just so much better. And this season, we even got a Catalyst, which adds a blinding effect to the missiles, which technically stops unstopped targets, and also causes a chain reaction explosion from those missiles. However, it does require a lot of sustain, so you have to be out in the open for quite some time. The traveling shots that are not hit scan are kind of annoying to hit, and the charge feature is really annoying and clunky. So a lot of people don't enjoy using it, but it can be very good. Following that at number 4, pretty much the complete opposite, we have Xenophage. A lot of people love using this weapon. It's very easy, you don't need a crit, it's hit scan, it's explosive, so pretty much any range, and has really good DPS to non-bosses. Although it does have a different damage number for bosses, some weapons in the game have that particular modifier. And being a heavy machine gun, has a decent amount of full ammo damage, although much less than that of the legendary. TLDR, it's very easy to use for pretty much any scenario, and people love using it. Although you're probably not going to be using it on Tormentors because you can't crit with it. Which is where the next weapon comes in at number 3, and the best heavy machine gun in the game, we have the Thunderlord. And I believe this season it got a catalyst where whenever you get those lightning strikes to hit on a target, you get some ammo back in the magazine. And if you didn't know, on top of that, whenever you hold the trigger down, it actually starts to fire faster as you're firing, which is not part of the catalyst, just part of the main gun. But if you have more ammo getting just shot right into the magazine, you have those higher RPMs for much longer, allowing it to be a pretty impressive DPS output and okay full ammo damage, on top of also being good with ad clear because of those lightning strikes. And personally, I love using these things on the Tormentors, especially in the first encounter in the new raid. Those Tormentors get absolutely wrecked by Thunderlord. And just in general, when it comes to heavy machine guns, they just feel really much better across the board, and I use them a lot more frequently. Up next at number 2, we have the legendary rockets. Definitely going to be part of the meta, especially and pretty much only if you have Gjallarhorn, which completely changes everything. Because let's face it, the DPS is pretty high, the full ammo damage is pretty poor, especially compared to the legendary grenade launchers, which have better in both categories. The Gjallarhorn is straight carrying these things in the meta, but when you have Gjallarhorn, they do like double the damage. Which is why you'll see pretty much every DPS these days either with a Divinity and Linears or with a Gjallarhorn on one guy and legendary rockets across everybody else, which means you can also have Witherhorde and Arbalest and Arianas or any other exotic special that you could want. And currently some of the most popular are definitely going to be Hothead and Blowout, obviously having a slightly higher damage profile than that of the Precision Frames, and obviously having some pretty good perks like Explosive Light or Clown Cartridge or Field Prep. And one that I'm very annoyed that I don't have yet is going to be Bump in the Night, which actually has Chill Clip, which is a different way to do things. You don't need those Explosive Light orbs, but it's pretty cool. And finally, at number 1, I probably shouldn't have to say it, but it's Gjallarhorn. In my opinion, the best heavy in the game is definitely going to be Gjallarhorn. Firstly, just by itself, it gives you some of the highest DPS in the game with a decent amount of full ammo damage, which is where it usually falls apart, is if you run out of ammo in Gjallarhorn, you got nothing else. And with that, the Catalyst gives it 2 in a tube, which obviously increases its DPS considerably. But the best part about it is that it gives your entire team's legendary rockets extra Wolfpack rounds, which nearly doubles their damage. And the fact that you need 30th anniversary doesn't really matter. You just need one Gjallarhorn in the team and everybody has legendary rockets and can use other things like Witherhorde or Arbalest or Arianas, whatever other exotic that you want to use. And it's become the running joke that you can use Gjallarhorn on everything, especially in Dares of Eternity where you have infinite ammo. Gjallarhorn is your ad killing, it is your major killing, it is your boss killing. And my favorite joke is that champions are literally handled by Gjallarhorn. Oh, that barrier champion? Nah, you don't need Arbalest, just wait for the shield and just fire more Gjallarhorn. That Overload champion healing through your damage? Fire more Gjallarhorn. That Unstop keeps walking at you? Just keep firing Gjallarhorn. As a Titan main, if I had a spirit weapon, it would definitely be Gjallarhorn. And of course, I just wanted to give an honorable mention to some other weapons that didn't make the top 10. Things like Parasite have incredible DPS output, Anarchy, really good total ammo damage without actually having to be out in the open. And of course, Leviathan's Breath, which actually has really good stats for DPS and full ammo damage and does even more damage, like 30 to 50% more damage to champions, which is kind of ridiculous, on top of also creating volatile on a perfect draw. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, a big thank you to Mama Dad, Kipishal, Wafaran, Robert Strera, James Osler, Monday, Stu Bachman, Juno Panther, Casey Reagan, William Peterson, and Arcus for their support on Patreon. And that's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.